This is part 2 for week 14's lecture. If you haven't watched part 1, go back to that link, start that one, and then come back to this one. Okay, now that we have a bit of background on energy policy, I want to talk about two examples of how solar power can be implemented. First, a story of a case in Utah, and second, a case in Central Asia. Your writing assignment will be related to these cases, so think specifically through the next few slides about what might influence a household's adoption of solar power. First, we're going to talk about Dr. Ma's friend named Mike, who lives in Utah. Mike installed solar power in his home in Utah, and as you can see here, it offsets about 80% of his family's annual electricity. Of course, you can also see here that the supply and storage changes based on the amount of sunlight he receives. Here you can see a hypothetical cost of a similar system. This includes state and federal tax credits and rebates that would offset the price. In 2013, the average annual electricity consumption for a U.S. residential utility customer was 10,908 kilowatts, an average of 909 kilowatts per month. Louisiana had the highest annual consumption, and Hawaii had the lowest. A typical 5-kilowatt home system will generate 500 kilowatt hours of electricity per month, but the costs and benefits will vary significantly by location based on the amount of sun available, electricity prices in the area, and the state and utility prices. These are all considerations someone would have to consider when thinking about installing solar power. However, these decisions look very different in various locations. For example, if you take the same exact system and move it to California or Arizona, everything changes. In Utah, Mike paid everything up front. In California, Mike would pay nothing up front, but he would contract with a solar company. And in Arizona, Mike would pay nothing up front, but contracts with the utility company. So you can see that due to different policies, the process of implementing residential solar power is very different and has varying costs to the consumer. For Mike, multiple levels of policies are at play. At the federal government level, he receives a 30% tax credit. The state government in Utah has a goal of 20% renewable energy by 2025, so he gets a 25% tax credit and a $150 per watt rebate. The utility company, Logan City Light and Power, uses net metering, so he gets paid by the utility company when he generates more power than he uses. At the local level, he has to work with Logan City to get the building permit to install solar panels. If you're interested in seeing what policies exist in your state, the database of state incentives for renewables and efficiency was established in 1995 and is operated by the NC Clean Energy Technology Center, NC State University. So you can check that out for other examples of renewable energy policies. States have been very active in the past year revising their renewable portfolio standards, which requires that a specific percentage of the electricity that utilities sell comes from renewable resources. For example, you can see that Indiana has a requirement of 10% by 2025. States have created these standards to diversify their energy resources, promote domestic energy production, and encourage economic development. Renewable energy policies help drive the nation's $64 billion market for wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources. These policies can play an integral role in state efforts to diversify their energy mix, promote economic development, and reduce emissions. Roughly half of the growth in the U.S. renewable energy generation since 2000 can be attributed to these state renewable energy requirements. Here you can see the status of net metering policies in each state. Remember from Mike's case in Utah, this is when you get paid by the utility company when you generate more power than you use. This can help consumers' decision to install renewable systems. Here you see the states that have an energy efficiency resource standard or goal. This is defined as a state policy that requires utilities to meet specific targets for energy savings according to a set schedule. These policies establish separate reduction targets for electricity sales, peak electric demand, and/or natural gas consumption. In most cases, utilities must achieve energy savings by developing demand-side management programs, which is typically provided through financial incentives to customers to install energy-efficient equipment, such as the case of Mike's solar system in Utah. Thus, the states categorized as having a standard, such as Michigan or Texas, are the ones with a policy that fits all of the following elements of a four-part test. First, the policy was adopted by the state legislature or regulatory body. Second, that the policy features a binding requirement. Third, that the policy includes specific targets for energy savings. And fourth, that the policy includes a set schedule for meeting these targets. These specific targets and goals serve to support the use of renewable resources in the state and provide assistance to consumers who want to install renewable resource infrastructure in their homes. Finally, I also want to talk about the role of electricity in development using the case study of Kyrgyzstan. I lived there for 7 months doing research for my master's work, and while living in the rural areas, you do notice how many homes don't have electricity and aren't connected to any electrical grid, so they don't even have the option of power supply without investing in infrastructure. In Kyrgyzstan, the National Energy Program has started to implement incentives for companies in renewable energy, so we may see availability increase in the future, but there are currently no tax incentives for consumers like we see in the States. To fill this gap, NGOs have begun to support microhydropower and solar energy projects. This is a picture of one house who participated in a solar energy project. You can see how remote it is, but you can also see their solar panels in the yard as well. And the blue skies are fairly representative of the climate. In this area, they get about 5.3 hours of sunlight on average every day, so it is well suited to solar power development. In a case like this, there are many barriers to solar power implementation. For example, the cost of installation can be too high for people to afford without assistance. Materials and equipment for installation, as well as maintenance, can be difficult to find in these settings, and people may have limited access to information about these technologies. However, the benefit of access to electricity is also high. Research has shown that when households have access to power, there are benefits in education outcomes. For example, children are able to study and do homework after dark. The family has increased access to information through radio or TV, and there's increased levels of safety. So while the barriers are high, we see multiple benefits to increasing access to electricity through solar power. This case also shows the differences between solar power development in different settings. Think about the ways this family's decision to implement solar power and the process to do so through an NGO, and how it would differ from Mike's process in Utah. So today we have talked about energy development, use, and conservation. We use 2 case studies of solar power to illustrate the different ways this renewable resource is used throughout the world. Be sure you can talk about the issues that show why we need energy policy, the instruments we use to address these issues, and the general goals of these policies. Also be sure to go to the discussion board to complete your activity for the week and let Dr. Ma and I know if you have any questions.